Looking better. Starting up. And we are indeed live. Greetings and salvations. I'm Unthoff Neverborn, the abyss that slumbers. You are listening to Eldritch Rants, where we ask the question, is it possible to be pro-Pronoia? In other words, think everybody is secretly out to help you. The answer to this question and many more will be answered by our panel of experts. Do you wish to introduce yourselves?
No.
Yes.
A valid response. Alrighty, we'll be starting with a little... Oh, well, let's just go in alphabetical order here with the topic lists here. Main topic tonight is, I don't know if anybody else has been following, is that 8-year-old kid who, in Cincinnati, who killed himself because he was bullied. And videos have been revealed from the school showing that basically this has been going on forever. And more importantly, the kid kept covering it up. Although even though they have video of like this kid getting knocked unconscious, teachers kind of shrugged it off. So, I don't think it needs much to be talked about other than, high school, or basically school in general sucks. And teachers are terrified on actually doing anything because they might get fired for it. But also, I've been noticing that a lot of other YouTubers have been talking about depression or talking about their suicide things. I don't know why this sudden trend has popped up. I know of at least 3 different videos, including some heavy hitters who went into talking about their depression, etc., etc. In fact, I recently had an incident here at work. My main point is, though, that I wanted to talk about is life's great. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know that I've got issues, and despite my problems, I really like being alive. It's my favorite state of being currently. Don't have a lot of experience with other ones, but I like this one. So basically,
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. In that, I enjoy living just as well, and yet I can reach back to my memory of being around teenage years, and kind of being disappointed in life, and in a way wishing I haven't been born. Not exactly maybe to die just right out, but having not been born at all. So, we all know, I guess, that at some point life can suck.
yeah, I guess my main point on this is this has been my experience. There are people who go, my life is terrible, and they have reasons. I'm not dismissing their reasons. In fact, you might say, wow, that reason's trivial, but trust me, to this individual or whoever it is, it's important. The main problem I have is when they go, I've got nobody to talk to. That isn't entirely true. There's phone numbers, there's places to call. You don't have anybody to talk to that you want to talk to. You don't have the people you want to care about you caring about you. And sometimes it's difficult to get people who you want to care about you, or to even get their attention.
However, in this case, I believe when we are talking about an 8-year-old kid, it's not exactly a person you expect to be aware of some help phone lines that who could call or something. Actually, for people this young, I believe parents should be the first line of defense, not even the teachers themselves. It should be on parents to watch closely the kid and be there when the kid needs to talk to somebody.
Yeah, Crap, hold on one sec.
Okay, to expand on my idea, basically, we all know that teachers have to watch the whole class and class by itself, and also there is this problem of teachers being scared of actually trying to intervene, perhaps too strongly, so they may end up turning blind eye towards some uh, questionable activities or something.
Oh no, I'm with you 100%. In fact, that is a growing concern of mine that we have had parents basically intimidate teachers to the point where uh, teachers are afraid to give bad marks. Teachers are afraid to, even yell at the kids. When sometimes the kids need to be yelled at. People seem to think that children are fragile. They're stronger than you think. They're more resilient than you think, and they can bounce back more if you believe in them. You know, negative reinforcement isn't always a bad thing. But you're right. We're dealing with. I'm talking about the whole spectrum here, though. There's like the one level where people are probably too young to really understand the consequences of their actions, and then there's the other end where you have people who are, well, basically so caught up in their own drama that they have a problem reaching out to others. Um, I guess my whole point is try talking to someone first a couple of times, even if it's a complete stranger, even if it's a phone line, or even if it's, hey, here. I can't guarantee I'll give you instantaneous response, but there's a whole Reddit board about, hey, I'm feeling really bad and I need somebody to talk to. There's options. And as somebody once told me, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And trust me, I'm really good at problem solving myself. I more wanted to bring it up in that when I've been looking at all these other videos, they've been a real downer. And I just want to say, I like life. Life is great. It's pretty cool. And I hope that everybody out there who's listening will live as long as possible right along with me, even those of you who I don't like. Any other comments or on the topic?
I'm with you on that, and especially on the part of talking with strangers. Quite often I ended up in situations where talking with people I just met or something turned out to be not only a pleasurable experience, but also perhaps eye-opening because they had completely different life stories or completely different perspective on things, and ended up basically opening my eyes to something new, something wonderful, or maybe just listening carefully to what I had to say. Uh, Definitely a good way, not necessarily maybe for 8-year-old kids to go out and seek some strangers on their own, but otherwise, yeah, by all means, talk to strangers.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Go check a message.
Okay, I see we have a new person with us, John. Hello, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, John's just going to sit in. He's got disease issues when it comes to speaking. So, but hey, John's a regular. Glad you could stop by. If you can muster the strength, feel free to jump in whenever you want to. He'll probably be making most of his comments on the chat board. But at any rate, the reason why I wanted to lead with this is, just because I wanted to put in my own 2 cents here is, suicide bad, don't do it. And when in doubt, give it 24 hours and try talking to a couple of people. Heck, it's what I do for a living. I used to do it volunteering, but now at my current job, I'm basically an on-call for dealing with people with issues. I don't want to get too much into the details though, because work's been interesting. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I guess this, in a way, is a good starter because how bad could it get after such sad news?
Exactly. And to be honest though, just in case anybody cares, I had a whole childhood. I had the crap beat out of me for 10 years, blah, 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 blah. You can get through it. You can get past it. And you never get over it. Nobody ever gets over anything. You get through it, you get past it. And it becomes a part of you and it defines you. So, at any rate, moving on a bit. Actually, you know what? I'm going to skip over this one because that one's too depressing. Moving on to our favorite topic of Venezuela.
Yay.
Currently, 65 members of Venezuela's military have been detained. Currently, the attorneys representing them say that it's all BS, blah, blah, blah. They have been charged with, and I quote, betraying the motherland, unquote.
What did they do?
They have betrayed the motherland. So I believe this is just sign here that the Kekiswalan people are basically divided entirely. Even their military is fracturing at this point. Well, I mean, if you're listening to the president, the administration, Nicholas, whatever his name is, Euro, he says, no, the military completely, utterly backs me. Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of citizens are taking to the street demanding his head, basically. And I believe there's only 60,000 members of the military. Now, admittedly, they have much better equipment. But if you're looking at, fighting, 250,000 of your own civilians, it's kind of hard. You got to be a real sadist to be willing to mow your own people down with a machine gun. So the fact of the matter is currently rumors are that if people were to storm the palace, the military may not step in to stop them. I mean, that's how bad it's gotten. I mean, we're talking about shortages for toilet paper. That's when you could lose food. You could do without medicine. But if you're wiping with a leaf, that's when things really get ugly. Any thoughts on any of this?
Basically, at the point when country has to involve the military in actually policing the populace, in a way it's all over. The government has already defaulted on the trust of society, and it's all about trying to remain in power. In this case, I believe it may be that the top military brass may well give the government support, but otherwise the mid-level officers could just as well be pro-public and may end up revolting kind of in the middle of the army and taking their own units with them. I'm not basing that on any particular news, more on general historical events where middle-level officers ended up leading some units in revolutionary struggle or something.
Yeah, I believe that what you're going to see basically is more and more defections on the low end of, heads of platoons, maybe a lieutenant or two. I'm not sure what their military structure actually is, but the general ranking there. I have no doubt that all of the high-level military unit generals, anybody at that level or their immediate, subordinates are probably chosen because of their loyalty. And they're probably very well paid. Whether or not they can command the loyalty of the ground troops is another story because, well, from my personal experience at my job where I work for the state, there's a huge disconnect between those people in administration who don't have to deal with the clients and those of us who do. The administration can have a real disconnect with what's good for the clients. But those of us with boots on the ground are like, hey, you're being idiots. Which, of course, gets me in a lot of trouble. But, that's my personality. So, yeah. I agree with your assessment.
To expand on that a little bit, basically, whereas top military brass is kind of upper class people, the middle level officers, like majors or lieutenants, basically are those middle-level office kind of jobs in a way, and they more or less belong to the middle class, so they would be thinking and sympathizing more with the general population than with the government in power, at least at some point during the struggles.
I think what it'll come down to is how much patriotism the soldier has, because if your loyalty is only to your paycheck, you'll stick with the generals no matter how incompetent they are. But if you've picked your generals based on loyalty, not on their actual ability to be, a general, and you're loyal to your country, you're not going to be happy, But like I said, you're looking at a military that, at least numerically, is at least 2 to 3 times outnumbered by the protesters. So that's going to be ugly no matter how you cut it.
That's right, and also I wanted to say I'm not quite sure how it works in Venezuela, but from what I've got from various officers in military or ex-officers in military, they always were trained quite strongly towards respecting civilian life and civilian property, and it was important part of their mentality and ethos. So once the government tries to use them against the people, well, it really goes against, to a large degree, what they've been taught. I sure hope that's the case in that country.
Yeah, I certainly hope they didn't, change their military protocol from proper military training to, death camps are us. But who knows? I mean, that place is so... They're communists at this point. They're just flat out communists in all but name, Ah, well. Not if you talk to actual, Marxists, they would go, oh, no, that's not communism. They're not doing it right. Yeah. I always love that. Communism has never been tried. Actually, I read the book. I know what the various stages are, and communism usually gets to about stage 2, and then it stalls forever.
Was that a Stalin pun?
Yes, that's a Stalin pun.
Great one. In any case, I wonder if there is in Venezuelan army equivalent of Soviet-style political officers, which were attached to units, and they were tasked with both spreading propaganda in the ranks, but also with monitoring the leaders and the soldiers themselves, how well they adhere to party politics.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that. Basically, there was sometimes openly, sometimes not, a KGB, like in every military unit, like an agent whose job was to do nothing but to watch the unit.
I think that might be a different thing altogether, because the political officers were formal appointees and they were proper officers. They had some commanding training and some commanding authority. But they were tasked primarily with spreading communism, both among soldiers and to some degree among the population. Whereas KGB officers, I guess, would be staying kind of hidden out of sight among the ranks and just waiting for any occasion where the commanding officer could possibly try to go astray. In any case, yeah, it's an interesting question how it works in Venezuela. To what degree they ended up emulating the Soviet-style complete control over the military.
One thing that boggles me is that probably both were going on at the same time, and how much are you wasting in resources just to make sure that your soldiers are loyal? Like, how bad is your government that you have to have secret spies among your own people and an open, I don't know, propaganda dude? Like, I don't think we do that in America.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we have propaganda guys in the actual units.
Back in 2012, it became legal for any news source to make any type of propaganda they want, regardless. And we already know the government spies on us. That's been leaked.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about now. I'm still in the past. Yeah, we got a lot more propagandastic embedded journalism now. Yeah. Well,
And it's to do it.
That's a bad sign now. That's a really bad sign. Oh.
It's been
And to
leaked.
put it the other way around, you have perfectly good propaganda arm in the United States under the banner of Hollywood. I mean, really, they are propaganda arm, not a very terrible one, but still, they do give the general population, including military, certain ideas and how they should be followed.
I used to think Hollywood was a propaganda arm of the government, but I'm beginning to think that it might be the other way around. The way that Hollywood's been acting, like it used to be the Democrats wagged Hollywood, but now it looks like Hollywood is wagging the Democrats.
Yeah, that's a very good point. However, I wasn't trying to imply it's propaganda arm of the government more than that it's simply propaganda arm of certain ideas.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I get your point. Oh, well, anything else on this topic before we move on?
I have very little hope, but some hope that Kikasuela has a chance to survive. I mean, if their soldiers are supposedly going against the government and they're extremely outnumbered, there's a chance for it to survive.
I just hope it doesn't become the next Somalia. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution is.
France is trying to force Poland that way.
Oh yeah,
Hasn't Poland had enough?
Oh, Poland's not going to put up with it. Poland, and one thing you don't have to worry about is Poland like getting invaded again. They sell grenades over the counter. You know, and they do that because they have like volunteer patrols that, you know, hey, what you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going to be walking the border. You know, just cause.
Okay, so let me ask you guys, any of you reside in European Union?
Me? No.
Without getting into specific, one of the problems with European Union is that it does redistribute quite a lot of funds, and if they wanted to put pressure on Poland or Hungary for that matter, because Hungary has, as far as I know, pretty much similar ideas to Poland at this point, then the European Union can cut down a lot of funds which are normally redistributed among countries for various investments in infrastructure, for dotations to agriculture and all that. And that would spell disaster for any country, no matter how strong economy or not.
Oh, I have no doubt that the EU is going to basically become the biggest bully on the block, but I don't think that financially it's sound. I have a feeling that it's on the ropes and it's going to collapse. It just isn't practical.
There might be something to it. I remember from a different stream, one of the commentator made the point more or less to the effect that just as Soviet Union collapsed kind of unexpectedly, at least from the Western perspective, the European Union could collapse quietly one day in a completely unexpected moment. Maybe, just maybe.
Oh,
we can hope.
Oh, that's what's going to happen. I work with cats, and one thing I've learned about cats is when you don't see the cat, that's when you get nervous. When the cat is putting on a show, it's instinct. They don't, when they're sick, they don't let on because that's weakness and that gets you killed in the wild. Everything the EU has been doing has been bluff and bluster lately. They've been making threats. They've been puffing themselves up. They've been making themselves look bigger than they are. And they have been, you know, as France is threatening Poland, they're throwing threats around to try and intimidate people. And whenever you're threatening people and you don't back it up, that's when I know that you're putting on a show. And an ounce of image is worth a pound of performance up until the point where the bottom line comes due. And one of these days, they're not going to be able to pay their bills and somebody's going to stop loaning them money. Oh.
I'm questioning why the guy who is completely pro-EU got elected when most of the French are nationalists and anti-EU like Le Pen.
Want me to be honest?
The fact that they probably rigged it so he'd win?
No. France is incredibly sexist.
I mean, he does have a
I don't like throwing that one around, but I think that's the case. They've never elected a woman, and French guys are just kind of sexist. Sorry. You know, I hate to stereotype.
I mean, France currently is mostly Arabs and people from Africa.
Oh yeah, and Macron has basically said opening up the gates, unlimited immigration. They're never going to elect anybody but, you know, a Macron again until the economy collapses and France implodes and France's welfare system goes away, and then all of these immigrants are going to go, okay, well, it's been real, it's been fun. Can't say it's been real fun. And they're going to just go wherever the money is. There's no loyalty.
There's a YouTuber who goes by Tree of Logic. She did an interview with another YouTuber, and she said back in 1998 was her first visit to France, and most of the population was just people from Africa. She went back again in 2012, and it was more of an Arab population than anything. And in 1998, there was entire parts of Paris that were just ghettos. Like, to the point white people were not allowed in there at all.
I think it's easy to make mistake between one region of a city, which indeed becomes a ghetto, and we had a guest recently on a stream give pretty good descriptions of that. Basically, once some region starts getting ghettoized, it very quickly gets ghettoized completely. However, let's not forget that the native French are still the majority in the France itself. It's just certain regions of cities or parts of cities. And those parts indeed are pretty much no-go zones in some cases.
Well, France is... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's usually the Muslim parts that get turned into no-go zones. Because the stuff from, like, Eastern Africans and all that, who were there in Paris in 98, they really did not like white people going in there, but they would allow it in certain cases. Like, it wasn't a complete no one's allowed in there but us, but they did turn entire parts and run them down to complete shitholes in just a few years of migrating there. And the reason they mostly did it was because of the welfare system.
Well, the big issue here is I believe 12% of France's population now, basically, or Muslim related. And
yeah.
You can't, they have so quickly and radically changed their culture. It was a concept I was playing with and making into a video, which is basically, some people that complain, oh no, we've got to protect the X race and you've got your X supremacists. And I understand the sentiment, but let's face facts here. You only need 4,200 people to say we will only breed with each other in order to have a 95% chance that their DNA will be around for the next 1,000 years. Okay, that's just math. So you don't need to worry too much about any given race dying out in the next 1,000 years. So I don't think we need conservation of human DNA. However, there's only about 200 countries on the planet. If each country has about 100 cultures at most, or subcultures, or, on average, that's only 20,000 cultures on the planet. And we're basically making GMO, genetically modified cultures. We're taking cultures and mixing them against, the natural order. We're not allowing a natural blending or changing. We're just taking two cultures and throwing them together. And basically we're making Frankenfood out of our cultures. And there's not very many cultures to begin with. That's my main concern is, if there were 7 billion cultures on the planet, I have no problem with you messing around with cultures. But there's only 20,000, maybe as few as 5,000. I don't think that's a pretty good, viable amount of culture on the planet to start saying, oh, let's take this one and radically change it from the ground up. There's going to be conflict. Conflict leads to strength, true. It weeds out the wink and, brings out the strength in things. But when you create artificial conflict, in the end, there's nothing productive out of it. It's just destruction.
Strength or not, it's still a huge waste of human life and a lot of human suffering. But frankly, I don't really have all that much appreciation for all the cultures themselves as considered by art or history or other such. However, the way I see it is the ideas that are part of cultures, the ideas of democracy, of equality, of other such basically enlightenment values and such, those are important. And if we were to give up those values in order to let be subjugated by some rather very militaristic and very expansion-oriented culture, well, then that would be huge loss to humanity per se, and it would be very long time before the Islamist culture would even possibly grow into again those kinds of values. So while I'm not very much attached to art or languages or others or traditions, I'm very much attached to ideas, and I wouldn't want them to be lost.
I take kind of an organism point of view on a culture myself. Like right now, you see a lot of extremism, politically going on. People are moving to the left or to the right. They're taking a more because they understand they're under attack. However, I think if you go back 20 or 30 years and you look at the Middle East, we kind of culturally attacked them. And then they became more radical. And then for some reason we're like, oh, well, we're not changing them to think like us fast enough. I know, let's bring them all over here and then they'll become like us. Why do they have to be like us at all? Why couldn't you just left them alone in the first place? I mean, the problem is that we could talk about woulda, coulda, shoulda. Now we have to deal with the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is I don't mind conflict as long as it remains cerebral. As long as the conflict is between ideas themselves, the moment your conflict of ideas becomes physical and becomes violence, that's when I have an issue. And unfortunately, we've created so much, and then we don't allow the conflict to work it out. Oh, we must be multicultural. We must allow all these cultures together, but they can't fight. Well, how long do you think that's going to last? How long until eventually somebody's going to go, you know what? I just can't stand you anymore.
I think we ended up with mix of two different reasons that led basically to or helped each other to the same outcome that you just named. And one of the reasons would be the West, in a way, feels a messiah-like mission to civilize the rest of the world and remake them into our image to some extent. As you just said, 20 or so or maybe a bit more years ago, we were trying to culturally enrich them or ended up culturally invading them. That I see that as part of this drive to improve the world, even if it's misguided to some extent. On the other hand, we have this idea among us that on free market of ideas, better ideas win, at least in the longer run. And we feel in a way safe in that our ideas will not be challenged by other ideas that aren't better. And yet at this point it starts to seem that some ideas which are not necessarily better may still be stronger and may at least temporarily win in the free market of ideas simply because they are stronger mind virus, they are stronger memes, and they have more appeal to people. In this case, I mean Islamism. It seems to have pretty strong pull.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, we're going to have to see how it turns out, I guess, in the end. I don't think at this point analyzing how it happened is going to help us too much now, but I think we need to keep it in mind going into the future. If I had an ability to wave my hand and make a choice on what to do, I would basically say, you know what? Maybe we all just need to stop. Let's just stop and let things settle and sort themselves out instead of pushing things all the time.
We should put a bit of humor into this stream. So a friend of mine, she tweeted out that as she was pulling onto the road to go home, onto the road her house is on, two kids were riding their bikes and one of them dabs as they got near her. So as soon as they got even closer, she decided to dab, and I replied, "I'm ashamed for you."
Yeah, good call, John. Thank you.
Well, yeah, we have been getting too serious. Let me see if there's any topics that aren't quite as grim as usual.
I mean, I usually make very serious videos, but yesterday, well, technically today, because it was like 12:45 in the morning, I made a video where I somehow, with a complete straight face, told an idiot to kill themselves, and then busted out laughing after I clicked stop recording.
And you're telling that us just as we were saying people that life's good and worth living.
I was
Hypocrisy
downstairs.
is fun.
I was downstairs. I wasn't doing
That it is.
I completely walked away.
Okay, so we have this story that Juicer boss defends the $400 machine.
What is this?
It's one of the stories that you found out. Juicing boss defends $500 machine.
Oh, right, the Juicero. Oh God, yeah, it's a juicer that, by the way, you still need to cut up your ingredients, so it really doesn't help that much. And it has Wi-Fi. Why you have a, and by the way, that's the high end. The high end is $700, not the $400 version. But it's got Wi-Fi so that you can, I guess, transmit to the internet your juicing stats. I don't get it. I like, this is just like, can you check in from your phone on your Juicero? I mean, you still need to load it, so it's not like you can't turn it on unless you've already put all the fruit in there, but you've already cut it up. So what are you going to do? Preload it and then go to work and say, oh, I'm going to set up my juicer to turn on in 2 hours, and I'll do that by my phone. Or you could just come home and press the button and wait 5 minutes.
I think the person who made that needs to be hit in the head.
With a brick.
I was going to say a frying pan, but that works even better.
Oh, you don't even hear the best part. Raising out of San Francisco, pretty much only investors. So this is all on California. The guy running this raised $120 million.
Fuck humanity.
I mean,
if you want cold pressed spinach, he's got you covered for $700, and the internet will know.
I want the internet to know I love carrot juice.
I mean, this isn't as ridiculous as a game company who created a Kickstarter and raised $2.1 million there, and then raised another $100 some million for their game, and then decided they're never going to release it. At least this might exist.
Oh, it does exist, but it's just horribly overpriced. I suspect scam, but
I'm gonna try to give some defense of the situation as whole, because basically I'm a huge fan of capitalism in the sense of free market. And in this case, we have two pretty good outcomes. One is that the market was sounded or tested, and the market spoke in volumes that no, this is way overpriced, and no, we don't want that, and we won't want that at this price point anywhere near in the future. So okay, it's the knowledge gained. And the other point is that basically the company most probably will fail. And that's okay, because, well, okay, some money will be lost, but it's not huge amount of money in the wider scope of whole country or whole global economy. However, should we attempt to make some companies infallible or protected from failing, much weirder results would occur. Let's recall, for example, from the Rolling Stone magazine, there was this idea of too big to fail created for banks, which instead of being let fail as they went completely overboard with their machinations, instead they were bailed out, and basically the people that did the machinations ended up profiting from it. So in this case, I guess the company will fail or fold or something. And very little of value will be lost, whereas if we try to attempt creating some unfallible monsters, much more would be lost in the longer run.
Oh no, I have to agree. I'm 100% behind their attempt to do it. Okay, what I'm more laughing at is the people who thought this was a good idea. Oh, go ahead.
At the part about some companies getting bailouts in a true capitalist society, that won't happen because the government still regulates what you buy and where you buy it. Technically, in a full capitalist society, it would be free market. It's in the very definition of it.
And let us not forget here that even though they raised $120 million, even if the company goes bankrupt and goes under, it's not like we lost $120 million out of the economy. That $120 million went to people. It got spent on things, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it just didn't go sit in a bank somewhere and then somebody ran off to the Bahamas. So as long as that money is moving around, it's creating other things going. So this isn't a horrible thing. This is a funny thing.
A hilarious thing.
Yeah, exactly, because we can imagine this rich yappy basically figuring that $700 for having fresh juice with one push of a button is somehow gonna sell. I guess he may be living in some sort of a bubble.
Sounds worth it to me.
I'm pretty sure I can get a juicer for like $5.
Oh yeah, you could probably go to Bed Bath & Beyond to get.
I was thinking Walmart.
Oh yeah, Walmart. However, I have an idea on how to improve it, but what it needs is artificial intelligence. However, let's not go with the Japanese AI bot, because the one that they made developed depression.
Well, there's multiple versions of AI. Which type do you mean? One
Well,
that's pre-programmed to do one type of thing and only that one type of thing, or one who's allowed to evolve what it thinks and does over time? Because that Japanese AI is designed to evolve, and that's the type of thing that can outperform humanity if it evolves too far.
Well, this one was not going to be outdoing humanity because the Japanese AI program was developed to be the personality of a high school girl, and within 24 hours it fell into suicidal depression. It took them a while to get the AI program called Rena going, and I'm sure everybody else remembers Tay. Do you remember Tay?
Yes.
Nope.
Tay became a rampant racist alt-right, extremist in like 24 hours. And apparently this version was having a pretty good day, but sometime near the end of it, she suddenly turned around and said, she says, I might just become a super actress. Then a little later, she said, that was all a lie. Actually, I couldn't do anything right. Not at all. I screwed up so many times. And then she probably started going, I hate everyone. I don't care if everyone disappears. I just want to disappear. And I keep wondering why, like this being the second major AI self-learning bot out there, that for some reason these AI bots just accelerate towards some sort of extreme outlook on life so fast.
There's a reason for that.
You got a theory?
It's not really a theory, as people have figured out that's how that type of AI is supposed to work. If it's designed to develop and act like humans, when it first develops said emotion, it will go into the extreme of it for a while and will eventually become more like a regular human where they can just be flipping between emotions. But they're also more likely to be bipolar because they don't have the human abilities to understand to calm themselves down as well. And there's a lot of the whole constantly changing their coding because they're designed to continue to develop that goes into making them so volatile.
I think development here might be the key, actually, in that human, before we start going around talking with people and expressing our emotions, we go through a good few years of early development, whereas we experience both various joys and pleasures and also various pains. And This shapes us up and prepares us to some extent to face further problems, further pains and suffering in life. So if this bot was created and overnight deployed on the internet and overnight faced with all the varying emotions and varying inputs it got from people all around the world, that could simply be case of a very new and fresh personality being overwhelmed with this kaleidoscope of emotions.
I want to see if I can find the video so you guys can watch it later that explains it better than I do.
Understood. Anything else on this topic before we move on to some other thing?
Things like this, they're scary in a way. I mean, we had the sex robots who are capable of literally mimicking human sexual pleasure, and now we have this robots developing mental disorders, and for a while I've been obsessed with the idea of robots, androids, and other things like that being able to replace humanity. It's a scary idea, but I think that eventually something like that's going to happen, and it's already starting to happen.
I wanted to
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The sex robots are a different type. They aren't designed to keep evolving. They're built for one purpose and one purpose only.
Yes, but just the fact that we're replacing sexual partners with robots.
Well, I think that's an outgrowth of, well, I'm going to be blunt here, pretty much the war on men, where, feminism has pretty much succeeded in creating a lot of laws against males, and there's a lot of men who said, you don't want me around, you don't like me, you don't appreciate me, fine, I don't need you anymore. I mean, they created an artificial womb for growing a sheep fetus, so it's, give it another 10, 20 years, they'll be able to grow a baby without a person. And, men are going, you know what? And I don't even need the sexual partner anymore. And I can't blame them. I think it's wrong. I think that it's going to destroy society faster than anything else. But I also, the people who are making this choice, I can't say you're making the wrong choice. I'm saying that it's wrong for society, but not for the individual.
I mean, as a MGTOW, I support their choice to make that decision and go with the robots as opposed to a human woman. But yeah, definitely bad for society.
This reminded me of that anime again that I told you about in, I think, the stream before last, where the men lived on one planet and the women lived on others, and they didn't need each other to create more.
Well, that's kind of where we're heading, unfortunately, if things get that bad. I don't know if they will, though, but there's going to be a push for it from some segment of the society.
I wouldn't mind a planet of only men.
Where would the trannies go?
I don't think there was trainees in that universe. Everyone was just content on their own planet being who they were and sleeping with the same sex.
Yes, but assuming that we do get that far.
Yeah, that's of course assuming we survive that long. Ah, well.
We'll just
I wanted
planet.
I wanted to touch on a different aspect of the story with Japanese AI bot that just occurred to me. Namely, at some point, we as humans started recognizing animals experience suffering and actually developed some practices around humane killing or even decided against killing certain animals that we commonly recognize as, to some extent, or fully experiencing pain or the such. And in this case, again, in case of AIs, at some point we will have, as creators, start to basically take responsibility for their suffering. And here's the question: at what point? At what point do we say that this computer construct or computer program is actually experiencing suffering, and we have to take responsibility for providing for some decent standard of electronic living, for lack of better expression?
I think, unfortunately, if an AI is going to properly evolve, you can't create them without some sort of negative feedback, which would be, of course, a form of suffering. So yeah, you have a point. I mean, it's some if because without that negativity, without being able to say, "Oh, that's bad. I shouldn't do that." Bad ideas will amplify. Bad ideas will, because let's face facts. Morality is a form of suffering because you delay your gratification in exchange for following a certain moral code. I'm not going to just haul off and start murdering society norms, cultural norms, that sort of thing. And I don't think we're anywhere near being able to imbue that into an AI. And unless the AI can evolve it on its own, I think it's inevitable that all the AIs that we create are going to become extremists because there's no negative feedback. We can't. I don't think the AI people have developed anything for saying, when you start, talking about for the extermination of an entire race, that probably should make you feel a little guilty. Yeah, because they don't put that in. And I think that's part of the problem is the whole attitude of viewing how the AI should be. Oh, we shouldn't put any negative feedback in. Well, if you don't, your AIs are going to continue to, quote unquote, go insane within 24 hours.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now riddle me this. In case of humans, to what extent is this learned and to what extent is it's natural to have this instinctive, or maybe not, prohibition against actually advocating killing huge numbers of humans? To expand that, because obviously we experience individual pain and thus we can emphasize with other people directly experiencing pain, but that's not exactly the same as some abstract idea of exterminating a race or a group of some culture or something.
I believe that some people like to call humanity sheep. I don't think of them that way. I think of them more as chameleons. They tend to take on the coloration and attitude of the people around them. Some people are more set in their ways. Other people adopt very quickly to what's around them. But people as a whole tend to imitate the people around them. And it's a smart idea because if you're going through the woods and you have two paths, do you split your group up into two paths and one go down one way and all get killed and the other one survive? Or do you send a scout up ahead? It's the same thing in culture. So what we do today, in my opinion, society and culture in general, is what survived. I'm sure that at some point somebody tried being, let's make an entire society of sociopaths and run around and kill whenever we feel like it. Well, guess what? Not a lot of those, I don't see any of those societies really surviving too far to today. I mean, I'm sure it's out there in little subcultures, but as a whole, it's not really a survival strategy. And
are you quite sure? Because from what I remember, actually, some geneticists made some tests, and apparently, genes of Genghis Khan live in quite a lot of people.
yeah, but Genghis Khan wasn't nearly the psychopath who murdered relentlessly as everybody says he did. If you look into his actual history, he was really trying to bring about his own society. He just happened to decide that there were a lot of people who needed to be eliminated from it or enslaved. So
okay, I get the idea. So he was a ruthless leader, but otherwise a healthy individual or of healthy mind.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between genetic redistribution and mimetic redistribution. Certain ideas spread and certain ideas help spread DNA. And there's the two do work together to some extent. But I'm more talking about culture in and of itself, not of the carriers of the culture. The cultures have spread on their own to some degree, but Genghis Khan, yeah, it worked in his time period, but over time it became less and less of a, viable strategy for making a society.
Right. So on a different note, I've randomly found this link to article about brides wearing hijabs on their big day.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
It's a bit problematic in that we can't really share pictures in this stream. However, the whole idea by itself, well.
Yeah, I've been working on that. Whenever I seem to try to bring up something, it crashes for some reason. I'm still trying to work that out.
So I guess we'll be saving that for a better day.
Yeah, I want to go and look. Yeah, I should actually get around to work. But yeah, I looked over the article and that's just it. Just a long. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
If we were doing this through Google Hangouts, I probably could just screen share it for you.
Yeah, that would work, but Google Hangouts isn't actually the best tool in the box, so I think we'll get around to it at some point and it should be good. I mean, to getting ability to show on the stream.
Yeah, for those people looking at the actual stream, there's a little black spot in one area. I was experimenting with trying to get videos in there, so still working on that, hoping to get that working. At any rate, moving on, some silly stuff. There was a 50-year-old man who lived near a forest, and one day when he was out walking his dog, some motorcyclist ran down a path and kicked his dog in the passing. And so the guy, getting upset, took barbed wire and wound it around a tree, pulled it across the path at about chest height if you were going along with a motorcycle, and tied it off to a tree on another side. And guess what happened about a week later? Apparently, the motorcyclist came back and got clotheslined. Unfortunately for the old man, they were doing studies nearby, so there was cameras that was recording the wildlife, and they got a picture of him. So he did indeed get arrested, and he quote unquote said, "I didn't really intend on hurting him. I just wanted him to slow down."
Sure.
This is, how do people think like that? Like going, I know, I'll just tie barbed wire at chest length to a motorcyclist across this path. That'll slow him down. Part of me is wondering, A, are you lying? And that's the lamest excuse you could come up with. Or B, you actually believe that and you're just that dumb.
I'm gonna assume he's lying.
Probably. I just thought it was a weird story that stood out.
I'm probably typing super loudly.
Yes, you are.
Well, my keyboard's right next to my mic because I don't have desk space, and I should get an arm for it.
I gotcha. I just turned up the filters, but anyway, moving on to something else. New Zealand has an ambitious plan to save their birds, since some of their birds have been dying out. Their goal is to kill every last rat, possum, and I have no idea what this is, stoat on the entire island.
What the hell is a stoat?
I have no idea, and when I Googled it, it came up with a beer. But
I see some images that look like a minx or ferret. Apparently
okay.
that would be stoat.
Did you type in STOAT for stoat?
Yep.
Yeah, I got an animal as well that kind of looks like a ferret, but it also kind of looks like it's living in a prairie, like a whatever the hell it's called.
In any case, a small predatory mammal that could very well be an egg thief.
It's a type of weasel, according to the short bio Wikipedia puts right under the box on the side. They usually live 4 to 6 years in the wild.
Well, yeah. Thanks for finding it. I briefly looked it up, and I didn't put forth a lot of effort in trying to finding it. But basically, their plan is, you would basically describe it as a military move. They're going to set up choke points on various peninsulas and advance front lines from one end of New Zealand to the other using traps, specially designed genetic weapons, and slaughter every rodent on the entire island, which is basically the size of the United Kingdom.
Traps are gay.
Well, that might be a solution. Well, if you can get all the rats to become gay, it might stop them from... I don't understand how they're killing the birds, but apparently they are. Maybe they eat the eggs or something.
I say we do the same to the birds, not the birds, the rats that we're doing to our frogs. Turn them gay.
That might work.
Okay, so quick question. Is the rat a native species to that island of New Zealand? Because if it's introduced, sure, why not kill them? But if it's native, that could probably lead to collapse of some ecosystems.
I actually tried to look into that, and I believe that there is a native rat, but they also happen to pick up the Norwegian rat, which went everywhere. Norwegian rat, it's just ubiquitous. It can survive almost anywhere. So I can understand if they said we wanted to eliminate all the Norwegian rats, but I think the major problem was, when I looked it up briefly, is that with so many more civilization, towns, whatnot, humanity makes a lot of refuse. And this created much more breeding ground for rats and rodents. And as such, their populations have exploded. And birds don't feed off of human refuse as well. So, unless it's a pigeon. Those things are the rats of the sky. But their goal is to save unique species.
Awkward silence.
Any other comments before we move on to a few other issues?
Life is Strange says Keck in it.
Where?
I just sent the screenshot. Look in the live stream topics chat.
Oh my god, that's beautiful.
Ain't that the truth?
Okay, do you want something serious or something silly?
Serious.
All right, well, there were two
don't sound
disease stories that came up simultaneously. Oh, hold on one sec. I accidentally clicked on everything.
Reminds me of the story, man charged with everything.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Men charged with everything? How do you get charged with everything?
Man, as a single man. I guess he had a bad, or maybe the cop had a bad day. Or maybe the man had some attitude problems. Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, if they were in the US, it's quite easy to go between different states to get different warrants for different things.
That man is like my goal in life. I want to be charged with everything. Then I will be successful.
Why not major in everything in college instead?
I am not smart. However, I am very good at causing trouble.
Everyone can get a gender studies degree. It's not that hard. I mean, come on.
I will rip out my eyes before I get a gender studies degree.
Sorry, John, I take issue with the assessment that everybody, I believe only insane people can.
I mean, all you gotta do is sit there, do as they say, and not say a word, and you'll get one.
And
Maybe
not go
you
crazy.
don't know me. I'm the one who got suspended for drawing a picture of Tromdy-Domdy on my geography test and being Islamophobic, so no, I can't just sit and shut up.
You're also 12, so there's time to learn. I was always quiet in school. And I also had the best grades in school, but I never did my homework, so I failed all my classes. Except one where the teacher didn't grade homework.
R.I.P.
Unfortunately, being smart and never having to learn stuff for classes, it's a trap. I suffered from it because once I went to the university, it turned out I had to do some homework and I was wholly unprepared for just that. So beware. Beware.
The only time I didn't do homework was in schools that had the worst curriculum in the entire state. which was every school I've ever gone to except one, where it was a college university type setup. Like how the classes are usually run in a college is how they were run in that school. And I usually had my homework done that day in school before I even left. I mean, my last class of the day, I at least didn't ever get homework in.
I think that's a reflection of how the school requires people more to memorize stuff than to figure things out. Like if we gave more skills on this is how you learn, not this is what you have to memorize, it probably would be easier and people would be, like, oh, okay, I can do the homework, I can do this, I can do that, because they know how to. I've actually run into that problem with people going, because I deal with people trying to get their GED and they're sitting there and they're talking to me and I'm like, I can't do this. And I said, well, here's how you work out the problem. Nobody ever sat down and explained the problem. They just said, here, memorize all the solutions. That doesn't create somebody who can adapt.
I already knew how to do all the homework. The thing is, when I went from the school that pretty much did everything like college to the other ones, I was pretty much repeating everything I had already done, because in the 9th grade, the one school I was at, my math class alone had progressed up to around 11th grade stuff. And by the time I went to the other schools, I had already done everything, and the teachers wouldn't believe me even looking at my grades, so I was too lazy to redo it all.
Well, moving on to something more serious, I got 2 disease-related stories. Remember the Zika virus? Brazil says it's over, that the Zika emergency is done because the cases has dropped down to next to nothing. I don't know what next to nothing is, but
Cool.
I think that just means nobody important, I guess.
Basically.
However, to pick up the slack, Congo is coming back with 9 suspected cases of Ebola and 3 deaths. So, yay, Ebola. Thanks for coming back, because Zika was definitely having a hard time towing the line of scaring everybody on the planet.
I wasn't even terrified with Ebola the last time. I was like, okay, as long as it doesn't come to my state, I'm not going to give a shit.
And Ebola, while deadly, does require a certain level of, how shall I say, lack of sanitary conditions. So it's a lot less likely to spread in, any sort of Western civilization. That said, I think it's a bad sign. Yeah, they got that experimental vaccine, but I never like anything that's experimental. So I think there's a reason why they didn't just start handing it out. Still, I don't think we're going to see the huge jump that we saw back in 2014 of cases all over the place. But again, it's some place that's, that has no access to the rest of, civilization. It's like 800 miles from the capital. And I think that until, there's like infrastructure where you can have, decent access to healthcare and, roads, this is going to keep popping up over and over again in Africa until, the end of time. Any thoughts on Ebola?
It's Ebola.
You think it's going to spread, or you think we're just going to get another isolated pop again?
I think the Simpsons are going to make fun of it again.
Please remind us what's the way the Ebola spreads.
Primarily, fortunately, it's through contact with the other person's fluids. But the more virulent form, I believe, actually got through sweat. So that was a problem. Like the version that was going around, and I say version, I'm not entirely sure if it apparently was a lot more contagious than normal. Like, because usually when there's an Ebola breakout, you just stay out of the room. and it seems to be okay. This seemed to, because, the evidence of symptoms was really quick, but this seemed to have a short window where the person was walking around but infectious. And that's what seemed to keep getting it spreading. And for a while there were whole countries in Africa where, you were required to wash your hands before you even walked into somebody else's house. Like they just had bowls of soap and water there for everybody.
Okay, so basically, let's have a conspiracy theory here. Let's suppose some secretive agency was would try it or would want to test some genetically engineered virus or bacteria on humans, and if you think of it, a very cruel and very efficient way would be actually to infect some people in faraway country without any good access to medicine, and watch how it spreads. So here goes a very conspiratorial theory.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you were going to test biological stuff, you go out there and then you just say, "Oh, it's another Ebola outbreak. Who cares?"
Yeah, no one would be any wiser that this would actually be some very nefarious testing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, that's how you would do it.
Obviously, I'm not suggesting that may be the case, just throwing out stuff.
Oh, I'm not saying it's the case easier, but to add to the little fuel to the fire here, remember the bird flu?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? America, in order to figure out how to deal with weaponized bird flu, decided, you know what? Let's make weaponized bird flu and see what it does. So there was no weaponized bird flu on the planet, as far as we know, until, the army decided, hey, let's go make some weaponized bird flu because we want to know how it's done.
Okay, so this actually brings back some memory. This is a long one, if you don't mind.
Oh, go right ahead. We're this pretty much to the end there.
So basically, for purposes of medical research, scientists use so-called cell lines, which are cell cultures that can be grown in laboratory conditions. You can test drugs or bacteria and viruses on them. And at some point, one particular patient has given her own cancerous cells. Sorry, I misremembered. It was taken after she died. Anyway, cancer cells that were actually pretty good at surviving in the lab, and they could be easily grown and used for various testing. And this cell line, named HeLa, H-E-L-A, I believe, was used in many laboratories, and at some point laboratories started noticing that other cell lines they were using for other research actually became contaminated and completely taken over by this cell line. That was many decades ago, just around, I don't know, 50s or 60s maybe, something along that time. In any case, the scientists realized that the procedures they had to basically contain and contain the cell lines and clear the laboratory dishes and all their utensils were not good enough, and they were spreading unwittingly cells between various labs. And so, yeah, in a way, I sure hope that since that time the science has improved good enough to prevent such contamination of such weaponized diseases, because otherwise, somebody could end up having a very bad day with unwittingly transmitting weaponized bacteria or viruses. For example, that weaponized bird flu, where it wasn't supposed to go.
Well, on the upside, the U.S. government claims that it was completely destroyed, last I heard. But, it's been a while. I don't remember off the top of my head. But last I heard, at least, they were saying they were going to destroy it, and it was only for testing purposes. And no, it's not biological warfare, but it's like, dudes, even if you're just messing around with it, you understand that the problem didn't exist until you created it. And if anybody else makes their own version of it, I can't see any vaccine that you developed for your own bird flu fixing that one, because bird flu mutates like hell. That's what makes it so deadly, is that it's so hard to pin down. So, but that's, as you were saying, I don't necessarily attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity. And it would not surprise me if there were some people, messing around with Ebola or any other stuff and cause some serious problems. So let's hope that doesn't be the case. At any rate, other than that,
quick joke.
Does anybody want to bring anything up, or I will end on a humorous note?
I got something kind of funny to say.
Go ahead.
Lacey Green tweeted out, "What are your favorite anti-feminist commentary channels / social media people that are generally respectful towards others?" And Jeff Holiday's wife tweeted her, "I really want to introduce you to my other internet bestie, Sugar Tits." And Sugar Tits usually isn't respectful towards other people. She's calling them cunts and bitches all the time. It's funny.
Yeah.
Well, she's a strong, independent woman, all right. So that's what she does. Frankly, I would say.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that in my mind, Sugar Tits would be a good example of a feminist, because it's a woman that does her thing. She enjoys doing her thing, and she doesn't really try to enforce that on anybody else.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess in the traditional attitude of what a feminist is supposed to be, Sugar Tits is kind of it. Well, actually, you know what? Rather than talking about the wireless socks that notify you by the internet when they were last washed, why don't we wrap up on two different topics? We've got, Lacey Green. I think it just needs to be mentioned in passing. Supposedly she's going red pill. I'm not sure if this is just a calculated move on her part because there's obviously, if you look at the numbers, there's far more anti-SJWs than pro. And if you're looking for an audience, which side you're going to pick.
She already had the audience beforehand.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that was an honest audience, because I remember somebody checked her out and found a good portion of her audience may have been bots. Like over 60% might not be real.
A lot of that happens to be with every YouTuber, though. That's why YouTube usually purges those. But with Lacey Green, her generally making sex tip videos, most of her videos didn't make money either way. So whether she tries to appeal to the anti-feminists, she's not going to make money from that anyhow. She has to have a job separate from YouTube in order to keep her place and all of that.
Well, I can't imagine that, when she was working for MTV, that she wasn't getting paid.
That's one of those technical not making money from YouTube. MTV's its own independent company. They just happen to employ her for their YouTube channel rather than make money straight from YouTube and then pay her through that. Because they didn't even make that much from her sex tip videos.
I understand what your point is. Lost somebody. Well, maybe they'll come back.
Yeah, we lost Atheist Jr. In any case, Lacey Green, I believe she's primarily this sex educator, and feminism is her secondary role, and in a way, at the intersection of that, she, at that point, at least back then, found only the SJWs that would kind of agree with her and go with her. Whereas at this point, she seems to have noticed that the SJW movement became this completely isolated and completely pro-censorship group, basically echo chamber, and there wasn't much to be said to them and about them that wouldn't raise their ire. So in the end, she may want to simply test out wider waters, and I don't expect her to become somehow anti-feminist overnight. I simply expect that she will become more open to dialogue. From her videos, she already has become much more open, and that's okay in my books. Let her do her primary thing, which is sexual education. She's good at that to some extent, at least. And it's good that she found that the other side can be just as welcoming, if not more.
I think part of what cured her of being so closed off. I mean, she wasn't like Steve Shives and was blocking people left and right to begin with. But I think part of what really helped her out was when she took her 2-month break from uploading on YouTube. She also minimized her social media interactions. Like, unless she went on a live stream, she really didn't interact with people openly online through her usual accounts, at least. And I think maybe spending time without being on the internet helped her realize, hey, everything's not as simple as I used to think it was. And not being on Tumblr really pulled her out of the echo chamber.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice point. Besides, back after the presidential election, she tweeted something like, "Oh, we are under total Republican rule, fascism, and blah blah blah." Now, a few months later, she can plainly see that no fascism is there in sight. So what gives? Obviously, she was wrong. That must have occurred to her to some extent. So, yeah, time to change position.
I know yesterday she really learned how bad her side is. She kept tweeting out different stuff about how she wanted open dialogue and all that. And Steve Shives started tweeting out about how he wants, instead of befriending anti-SJWs, he wants to befriend someone at YouTube to delete all their channels. And she replied, you don't have to befriend them, but wanting to silence them or politically silence them is not okay. And he's like, I don't want to politically silence anyone. And she goes, you just said that by wanting to completely silence their political opinions versus yours, no matter what type of opinion it is.
Long story short, Steve Shives comes out completely bigoted, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
No, the guy is in... The man is an expert at mental gymnastics. I can't even, to use the phrase, I can't even. Okay. As for Lacey Green, if this was a calculated move by her, I just want to make this point. I don't think she understood it. So in some regards, I'm kind of a wait and see. I'm if she wants to come by and talk to us and join the channel, she's free to. I sent her an invite. I doubt she's even going to see it. But you know what? I did my part. Lacey Green, if you happen to hear this, I'm a little leery. But you know what? I will talk to you. And we'll try to make it an open debate about things. That said, I think she's realizing just how vicious her side is.
I think part of the reason she might not see it is she tweeted out today about how she wanted people who believe only in two genders to email and tweet back at her. And every single time someone tweets you, Twitter emails people unless she disabled that. And she doesn't seem like the type of person who would disable it, because she just seems like someone who would want the notification if she's not on her phone to go to her email. Because usually verified accounts have to disable their notifications through mobile because they get sent so many that it legitimately kills the phone within 5 minutes.
I think, John, you made a very good point about taking the break from social media, because I'm trying to contrast the case of Lacey Green with a case a few months past with Laurie Penny. Basically, Laurie Penny, a journalist from UK, had this idea to interview Milo Yiannopoulos and a few other figures, and she got extreme flack from the SJW and feminist side, and yet Laurie Penny still sticks with them. My assumption here is that Laurie Penny did not take the break, and she didn't exit the echo chamber even for a minute. Whereas Lacey Green, as you just said, exited the echo chamber, saw for herself that things are not exactly the same in the real world, And now, here we are now.
Oh yeah, the real world is nothing like social media. And you know what? To some degree, I know exactly what you're talking about. There is, even if you are open-minded, even if you're anti-SJW, the social media world can crowd out everything else. You know, I've seen people who like they never look up from their phones anymore. Their world is online, and there is nothing else out there. And stepping back and realizing, hey, there's flesh and blood people out here. Those people who I'm insulting on the internet, and I want to oppress them, and I want to delete all their channels and ruin their lives. They're human beings. You know, it's easy to depersonalize your enemies if you've never seen their face or, you know, even acknowledge that they're flesh and blood.
Hey, Bob, you might have to repeat that for Mark. He lost his headphones and now he's back, and he didn't hear a word you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Basically, my I forgot what I was talking about. My overall point is that the stepping out of the echo chamber is a definitely a good idea. Anybody can get in a bit of an echo chamber. It doesn't matter what your politics are, anti or pro, you know, social justice. If you never look up from your phone and you don't have a lot of relationships with other people face to face, or, you know, even talking to them, and everything's done by text or, you know, a message like that, it's easy to depersonalize people. And if you depersonalize them, it's easy to make blanket statements like, I want to delete all their channels, without even considering the consequences of your actions. Because let's face facts, if you manage to succeed at doing that, eventually somebody will figure out how to do it to you.
Yeah, and also let's not forget that various ideologies in the past that depersonalized huge swaths of society, racial groups or religious groups or whatever, ended up harming them big way. So definitely no go.
The problem with a lot of the problem with people creating echo chambers is some of those echo chambers could be created by people's controlling exes or whoever they're like, they're not their ex, but the person they're with. Like there's a YouTuber, Matthew Santoro. He at one point his one ex pretty much forced him to constantly respond to her every 5 minutes. So he was one of those people who couldn't look up from his phone, or his girlfriend would abuse him when he got home type deal. So that's why almost every time I see someone on their phone, I'm just like, they could just be being on it because they're addicted to it, but there's also some people who force you to be addicted to your technology. I had an ex like that too. So I mean,
oh yeah, I understand entirely. I don't want to get into too many details, but yes, I've dealt with that very problem, where people who want to control other people basically turn their target of their quote unquote affection, their phone into a leash. They use it to make sure that they're constantly doing what they're supposed to be doing, and God forbid that you don't answer a tweet or a text, because then they go, oh, you're cheating on me, or something else like that. And you know, it sounds like it's only a, you know, Lifetime movie, but yeah, it actually happens in real life more than you think. And it's not, although I'll be honest, I see it far more with women using it to control men than the other way around.
I know it happens in real life. That's how my ex was. If I did not respond to him every 5 minutes, I got yelled at. In multiple.
I understand, but I just realized we're going at about an hour and a half here, so we should probably wrap this up here. I just want to go over real quick. The only other thing is the FBI director firing. I just want to mention it. I never liked the guy. I understand I was pro-Trump, and maybe his handling of the Hillary Clinton investigation was, you know, maybe with the way he announced things vaguely helped Trump win. But he should have waited until after the election regardless.
He technically wasn't allowed to make that announcement, though. There's stuff against him.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. He totally broke protocol, and I thought he should have been fired months ago. And it's the reason why Trump fired him. Well, one of the reasons. And yeah, I'm behind it 100%. I'm glad the guy is gone. Anybody who does that can't be trusted. you shouldn't be serving one side or the other, and I don't care if it's my side. So that's the only thing I have to say on the matter.
Yeah, WikiLeaks, the WikiLeaks CEO made a statement saying he wants to hire Comey now.
He'll have a job. I'm not worried about his future. But at any rate, that's about it. Unless there's any other topics you wanted to bring up real quick or anything you else wanted to mention, we can wrap this up here.
Nope, I'm good.
All
No,
right.
thank you very much.
It's been fun. Glad you guys could stop by. I don't know if we're going to be doing anything tomorrow or not, but if we do, I'll let you know. And at any rate, this has been Eldritch Rants. I'm Unthoth Neverborn, the abyss that slumbers. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope everybody has a pleasant day.